Bobby J. Elswick, First Sergeant, E8, retired, U.S. Army.
Hello, I'm Joe Holloway, and I'm your host for Eastern Shore Veterans, their story, their honor. Our mission is twofold. First, to honor our veterans for their service to our country, and second, to record a history for us and future generations so we will remember the sacrifices they have made for our freedom. My guest today is Bobby Elswick. Bobby hails from Parsonsburg, Maryland. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Joe.
Here we are. We've known each other for what, 40 years, something like that? Yeah, we were in the National.
Too many to remember.
Yeah, we were in the National Guard together. You joined in what,
1970.
Yeah, and you stayed. I got out in '77. You stayed until
94.
94, and you had something happen to you that used to not happen to National Guardsmen. If you want to fill us in on that a little bit.
Well, and originally, and I thought when you joined the National Guard, that was to take care of the nation and defend the nation. And if there was ever a call up, the regular Army would go, and we would go and take the regular Army place around different bases. And actually, it didn't happen that way. We were one of the first ones to be activated to go to Desert Storm in 1990.
1990. So they put you on an airplane, and you left Salisbury and ended up in the desert somewhere.
Well, I left Salisbury and went on a bus to Fort Eustis, Virginia. That's where our mobilization station was.
I see.
And we left there and flew out of Langley to Saudi Arabia.
I see. Yeah. We all know that everybody joined the Guard most of the time. You know, it was a 6-year commitment. Why did you decide to stay in the Guard?
Well, I achieved rank pretty fast. The Salisbury unit was an infantry unit, and it was just changing over to military police. When I joined, I was one of the first few that went to the Army Military Police School. When I came back, I was an E3, I was teaching E6 and E7 military police classes, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the people in the Guards, many lifelong friends in the Guards, and it just went on, and time went by pretty quick. First thing you know, I had my 6 years in. Of course, the recruiters were there asking you want to re-enlist, you want to re-enlist, and I said yes, and 3 more years, and then I had 9 years, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm halfway to a retirement. Why get out now? I didn't know then we were going to be mobilized and go to war when I was 40 years old, but I had 20 years in. I could have probably gotten out.
Right.
My wife says, you don't have to go, you can retire. I said, no, I have to go. These are my men.
And, you know, your leadership by going, you know, did a lot for their morale, you know. So what's the difference? You said Salisbury National Guard unit went from infantry to MP, and what was the difference there between those two types of service?
Well, all the soldiers learn map reading and weapons qualifications and hand-to-hand combat, and just the infantry skills, bivouac, camouflage, and sneaking, you know, quiet tactics and no light and all. And then when we changed the MPs had a dual purpose. We went to Fort Meade several times, and we were traffic cops riding around in MP cars giving people speeding tickets. And the other part of our 2-week summer camp, we'd take over a stockade and guard the people, the U.S. Army prisoners that were given 2 months, 6 months, or whatever in stockade for AWOL or whatever. But it was a big transition from infantry to the MPs to all the MP equipment, the gear, the 45s, the nightsticks, handcuffs, the whole 9 yards.
So then you went to Crisfield as a first sergeant in the transportation company. Explain the transition from that to from the MPs for you.
Well, the first couple of years in the transportation company was really nice. They would give us a real life mission, whereas in the MPs it was always we'd take some of our people and make them the aggressors, whether it be riot control or whatever, and you know they would be the aggressors, and it was all made up. You know, you knew the guy, you knew he was your buddy, so you couldn't really, you know, hit him with a baton or whatever. But in the transportation company, our missions for summer camps were real life situations. You go to a fort, load up tractor trailers full of equipment, and haul them across to the West Coast. And you had to learn how to, you actually load a tank and put it on a tractor trailer or flatbed, and you got to chain it down, strap it down, and everything was real.
You mentioned riot training, and that brings back something. When I joined in '71, the riots were pretty much over with. Did you experience any of that?
No.
Or did you miss that also?
The month and year that I joined, June of 1970, it was still, just had become an MP unit, and they had just come back from College Park from the riots. When I joined, they were coming back and putting their stuff away and cleaning everything up.
Yeah. You had to leave your family.
Yes.
Your daughter was 18 months old.
Yes.
That's pretty tough.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had the fear that she wouldn't know me when I come back. And I had braced myself for give her some time and she'll get to know me. And it wasn't like that at all. As soon as she saw me, I don't think she was out of my arms for 2 weeks.
Yeah. How long were you?
9 months.
9 months.
She was not even hardly able to walk when I left, and when I got back, she'd come out and get ready to go down the steps, and I would like, here, let me get her, and my wife Rhonda says, let her go. She can go.
Yeah.
And she went right on down the steps and right back up the steps.
about
I'm
that?
like,
Yeah.
9 months.
9 months.
That's a
How
long
much
time.
change has happened? Yeah. A question I like to ask people. You know, now it's a little different. Most of these guys, when they go to war, they're 18, 19-year-old. So you were probably, pushing 40?
I was 40.
Yeah, you were pushing 40. As a first sergeant, correct, for your company.
Yeah.
What was your first thoughts when you got off the airplane in this, I call it faraway land?
Well, I had heard and read a lot about the Iraqis moving in. They took over Kuwait. They were going to move on in and take over Saudi. And I had a lot of sympathy for the Saudi people that they were unable to defend themselves. So I was okay with going and helping them out and to defend them against a nation that was coming in to just take over their whole country and all their assets.
Just invade them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard some pretty bad stories about some of the things that were happening, especially like in Kuwait and things like that.
Yes.
So you get there, and your whole company went. Now, your company was from Chrisfield, correct?
Chrisfield.
Chrisfield, and
1229 Transportation Company.
so what were your duties?
Haul supplies and haul equipment and haul POWs back into Saudi after we went through into Iraq. And also, fortunately, our mission never did have it, and not a lot of people knew it, but we had one tractor trailer loaded with body bags. They said we were going to lose 20% casualties in the first month. And that was our mission that the soldiers didn't know that they were going to be doing. Fortunately, we never had it.
Yeah, I remember General Schwarzkopf said that was probably going to happen. It was going to be a high rate, but unfortunately it didn't happen.
Right.
So.
Well, we had a lot of propaganda. They told us the Republican Guard all of them were 6'4", weighed 250 pounds, and they were the elite. And when we got in Iraq, they could run faster than the rest of them.
Is that right?
And surrender quicker.
Yeah. How about that? So you end up first touch down in Saudi.
In Saudi.
Saudi, and all your guys get together, and then where did you go from there?
Well, we moved from the port where all of our equipment was unloaded. We moved in the desert in Saudi, and then up toward the Iraqi border. And the Iraqis had dug a moat, so to speak, along the whole country line and filled it with oil. And they were going to set it on fire if and when we crossed it. And when we crossed it, we had the engineers come in with bulldozers and fill up the moats so that we could drive our equipment across into Iraq.
So it works both ways.
Yes.
They dug it out and you filled it in. Yeah. So then you go on into Iraq with your convoy, I guess you call it.
Yes, we went on into Iraq and made a base there. Then we went on to Kuwait, where the oil fires were burning. We were so close to the oil fires, you couldn't stand it. You had to roll the windows up on the vehicles to keep from it burning you.
It was that hot.
Yes.
That hot.
You could see them for 8 hours and just drive 8 hours toward them, and they were still there. I mean, there was flames shooting
So it's
thousands of feet in the air.
sort of like driving toward the Rockies. It looks like you're 5 miles away, but you're 150 miles away or something like that. How about that? You know, in any war, I guess, the unfortunate parts, some people have to experience what happens, I guess, death and things like that. And I know that we didn't have a lot of casualties on our side. Did you have to be around any of that from the other side?
Yes, in Kuwait, when the Air Force actually ran the Iraqis out of Kuwait, which that's when they set the oil fires, and they stole everything that they could possibly get, pushing wheelbarrows and vehicles or whatever, and the Air Force just bombed, they called it Route 1, and the Air Force just bombed them into submission. And when we got to Kuwait, there was bodies and parts and...
Is that what they call the highway of death?
Yes.
Is that what I read about that? Yeah. And I guess they just moved this over to the side of the road to clear the road. And
Yeah, they
keep
just
on
cleared
going,
it,
Keep
and
on,
we
keep
went
on
right on
going.
through.
Yeah. The men that served under you, like say, you all were surprised, I guess, to no end there that this had happened, that you were going overseas. How did they handle it?
Every emotion imaginable. Young kids that had joined thought they were going for college tuition, didn't think they would ever get mobilized, and even 40-year-old men that were leaving their jobs and their families were in tears when we were leaving.
Yeah.
My daughter was 18 months old when I left. That's probably the hardest part.
Yeah, that had to be the hardest part, I'm sure. So you were the National Guard, and then there was the regular Army was there, and I guess Marines were there too.
Yes.
Okay.
Air Force.
Air Force.
The French Army was
you
there.
had interaction with them.
Yes.
How about that? How did they? I mean, the old saying is, when you put water in a bucket, it's just water, right? Everybody worked together well over there?
Yes,
Yeah.
everybody
Wasn't any
had
animosity between people?
No, everybody had their jobs to do in their sectors, and everybody did their job, did a great job. We were within 4 hours of downtown Baghdad when the ceasefire came, and everybody in my company that was associated with it, and I had a tank company following me, and everybody there wanted to go on into Baghdad, finish it.
Get the job done.
If they had done what General Schwarzkopf wanted, then our guys might not be in Iraq today.
Yeah, I know. We don't want to get into the politics of this conversation, but I can understand what you're saying, and it's disappointing, isn't it, when you can't finish a job that you thought you went there to do. So anyway,
We took 167 men and brought back 167 men.
That's wonderful.
I was proud.
Yeah, that's something to be really proud of. Brought 167 men over and brought 167 back, thank goodness. How many trucks and Jeeps and what was the size of your unit as far as?
Well, there was no more Jeeps.
Uh-huh.
That was a good vehicle, and the Army decided to do away with it.
Yeah.
They came out with the Humvees.
Yeah.
We had 60 tractors and 120 trailers. Each tractor had 2 trailers assigned to it, and they piggybacked them till they got where they wanted, and then you may have to take a loaded trailer and drop it and wait for them to unload it and go back and get a another trailer to carry it somewhere else. And at some point in time, you had to go back and retrieve your trailers. So 60 tractors, 120 trailers, a wrecker, a big wrecker for to haul in one that broke down. We had pickup trucks. The captain had a Chevrolet Blazer, 4-wheel drive, and mess truck, deuce and a half mess truck, and a few pickups for the maintenance department to haul parts and supplies.
Right. Now, does all this equipment go from Crisfield to Saudi?
Yes.
So all your equipment in Crisfield went to Saudi Arabia?
Every piece of paper we had in Crisfield went with us.
The whole works?
Everything.
The whole thing. Now, were you all armed?
Yes.
So you all carried your
M16s.
M16s as any soldier would. Even the truck drivers, they carried their M16s with them at all times. And
You couldn't be out of your tent without your flak jacket, your gas mask, your helmet, and your M16 weapon.
what sort of things did you haul when you were moving? I know you said you had body bags at some point in time. And what other items did you have to transport?
We hauled artillery ammunition for the howitzer weapons. We hauled them to support the infantry and all that was on the front lines in front of us. We hauled food, supplies, medical supplies, and any supplies that they might need, tents and resupplies of things that were broke, wore out, lost, whatever. Anything that needed to be hauled, we were
So
transportation.
you hauled that out, and they give you a load of POWs to bring back. Yeah, so you had what they call in the trucking industry a backhaul.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they call it. It's interesting, you know, people think of war, they think of, you watch these TV shows, you know, you see mostly, you know, people shooting guns or whatever. We all know that the support is the biggest part, one of the larger parts of what's going on. You don't see much of that on TV, you know what I'm saying? So how important is that, you know, that end of the support?
If you watch the news on TV, when they say they've cut off the supply routes, and if they don't have food, water, ammunition, then they're close to defeat. Our job was to get them food, ammunition, water, whatever they needed. Our job was to get it there. If something happened and we didn't go, then they could only function a small amount of time before it was done.
A few hours and they were done. Yeah, especially in those kind of temperatures and things like that. You know,
The temperatures and the dust and the sand was really hard on the equipment. The vehicles, the air filters, fuel filters, and everything had to be changed.
Yeah, how often did you have to change air filters? That's interesting.
Well, you had to clean them. You did a daily maintenance inspection, just like we did at home, and you had to clean them. And then at a certain point in time, after so many hours, the motor pool would call this particular truck in and service it, change the oil, change the filters, change the air filters, and check all the tires and service it more or less.
So at every day, the air filters had to be taken out and blown out.
Yeah,
or
they had to be cleaned.
Cleaned out, yeah. So yeah. We were talking about you had the bulldozer going across the sand and your trucks having to follow in the tracks because of the landmines and things. Now we hear on the news about IEDs. Did they have those there?
We never encountered any. We had one truck that had run over a tire carcass that was hauling a whole tractor trailer load of 155 howitzer rounds. And the tar carcass wound up and burnt the brake line in two, and it locked the brakes on the tractor and trailer. And it was within a quarter mile of our base, and it cooked off. Biggest explosion that I have personally ever seen.
How about that?
And there wasn't a part of the tractor trailer that you couldn't pick up by hand and load it on a pickup.
Wow. How about that?
Just gone in seconds.
And the driver got out okay and got away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any trouble with the trucks getting stuck?
Yes.
I know
The-
most everything's four-wheel drive, but still, you
Well,
know, the
these-
sand, different
these-
kinds of sand's different, you know.
The tractor trailers that we had at Chrisfield were solely on-road vehicles. They were not to go off the road. In fact, in our summer camp missions, our captain refused to let our tractor trailers off the hard surface road. It was right in the book. And we got over there and we're like, these trucks don't do that. And the general said, they're my trucks now. You will go across the desert.
So were they four-wheel drive, front-wheel drive?
No,
Okay.
they
so,
were like commercial tractor trailers.
Okay. So
And we had a lot of them stuck in the sand. Sand was, it was like riding on acetate.
you let you aero the tires?
Only dusty. No,
You didn't let the aero the tires?
No.
Okay. I didn't know whether that worked or not.
No.
Sometimes it don't work at acetate either. I've experienced that. What's the process? You had a wrecker, you said, and
Yes,
you know,
we had
but you're in a war here. You know, you want to.
well, you have to do what you have to do in war. If one got stuck or broke down, the wrecker would go retrieve it and pull it back
Did
to our
you-
base camp.
Did your wrecker travel in the convoys with you when you went?
If we were all going to one place,
Right.
it did.
Uh-huh.
It stayed at the base camp, and unless we got word back that they needed the wrecker to pull a truck, most time one truck would pull another truck. They'd
Right.
find a better position for another truck, and they all had chains, and
I see.
they would pull themselves out.
Right. So they could pull. Sometimes they could pull themselves out.
Yeah, if they got on a better piece of
Right.
ground that wasn't quite as sandy
Yeah.
or as deep.
The sand over there, was it something like Assateague
Nothing.
Island? It was
Nothing like
different?
acetate. It's more like dust.
Uh-huh.
It's more like on a construction site that you have clay that you bring in and you compact, and then when it rains, it's really muddy and slippery. But when it dries out and the sun bakes it, and then you ride traffic over it, it turns to like talcum powder.
How about
I mean, when you stomp your foot, it's a
Just
big cloud comes
comes
up,
up.
and that was the kind of sand that was over there.
Wow.
And 6 inches below that was like bedrock, granite. You couldn't drive a tent post in the ground. You had to use sandbags to hold the tent ropes.
Well, when the wind blew and blew a lot of that sand around it, it eventually blew all the sand off the bedrock that made it like a hard surface, or did more sand just come
More
along the top?
sand
So
come in.
it just never cleared the road off for you, so you'd have a nice hard road to drive on. Huh? How about that? So you're over there 9 months, and naturally, you know, you weren't expecting to be going. You know, it came as a surprise. Support from home, letters, packages. Did they keep up with getting that stuff to you pretty well?
Pretty much after they got settled in and got set up, we had mail call every day. The captain wanted me to pass out the mail as first sergeant because normally everything that come out of me to the soldiers was details, work details, extra details, guard duty, whatever. And a positive thing was soldiers looking for mail, so he wanted me to be in a position to do something positive for the soldiers when everything normally came out of my office was work related. So the mail and the packages were very, very important to all the men that were over there.
You know, you hear, you watch, I keep mentioning the movies or, you know, different things about war. Did you ever have a situation where the soldier would come to you and, you know, was in some dire straits about something that had happened at home that you had to counsel him on and,
Yes.
you know, smooth things over, in other words, and get his spirits back up? Anything come to mind about either one of those incidents? Or
Unfortunately, Joe, there's with 167 men and women, there's all different problems, all different kinds of problems. When we left, the Army made us have a will, power of attorney, which a power of attorney can do anything. And some of them did. Some of them's wives or spouses sold everything they had. When the soldier come back, had nothing to go home to, sold vehicles, homes, gave up their homes, throwed their personal belongings away, and the soldier come back to nothing. Very sad.
Yeah, very sad. You mentioned that's something we haven't talked about. That men and women. This was probably one of the, well, not the first, because the women were involved in Vietnam and Korea as nurses and things like that. But this was probably one of the first actions we saw where women were actually out in the field. Now, of course, your company, they weren't fighting; they were more in transportation.
I had about 14 women, and they were as good a tractor trailer drivers as the men.
Is that right?
In some cases, better. And my hat's off to the ladies. They had their own facilities, bathrooms, shower facilities,
Right.
their own tents, and they acted very professional. And our soldiers, we were all soldiers, and we took care of each other.
Yeah. How did of course, you said earlier you didn't have a lot of interaction with the Saudis or the Kuwaitis, but how did that work out with the women and the men? I mean, is there anything you all had to do differently because you had women with you?
Yes. The Saudi women always wore veils and long robes or whatever. And our women had PT uniforms, which was shorts and T-shirts, and a lot of them still did their morning exercises when they could. And if the Saudis saw them, they complained, and the women couldn't be seen in public with shorts on or T-shirts, and they had to have their uniform on. And the Saudis couldn't say anything about it. But the Saudis, we had courses that we had to take before we went over of the Saudi customs and how to respect the Saudi customs. If you stopped by a roadside eating place that was just set up in a tent that the Saudis were in, you couldn't put your left hand on the table. It always had to sit on your lap under the table. And you couldn't cross your legs. If man or woman, you didn't cross your legs at any time. And no alcohol. They had Saudi cigarettes, which were pretty rough little cigarettes. But our PX tents and all supplied us with cigarettes and cookies.
No beer?
No beer.
They didn't bring beer over to the country for you.
That was the commander's dream.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, if you'd been out on patrol 3 or 4 days, you come back, you got a couple days off, you could go down to the beer tent and fill up. And over there was no alcohol. Of course, when the ones in Vietnam, they'd get a little too much to drink, they want to go back and start trouble with their soldiers or with their commanders or lieutenants. And we didn't have that over there.
Didn't have that problem,
there was
did you?
no alcohol, and the commanders loved it.
Yeah. How about that? Yeah, it made time go by slower, though, I suppose. It would have been something nice to loosen people up a little bit and make them feel,
Ice water would have been nice.
Yeah.
You drank water that was the best time to get a cool drink of water would be like 2 o'clock in the morning. And if it was 60 degrees at night, your water was 60 degrees.
How about that?
We didn't have ice. And the thing I missed most was ice water.
How about that?
And when I got back, I wanted ice water.
How about that? Yeah.
I still drink ice water.
This war that you went to, it was, they call it the 100-Day War. Is that what it started out? And what was it, Desert Shield?
Desert Shield when we left. And then once we got in position and everything, and once the actual assault started, it was Desert Storm.
Desert Storm.
And that's where shock and awe came from.
I remember watching General Schwarzkopf. He reminded me of John Wayne.
He was my hero.
Yeah, I tell you what.
A good man.
Yeah, yes, he was. His leadership abilities and his morale, he boosted the morale of the troops. The way I saw it on TV, it's like everybody was behind him.
He was a great leader, a great inspiration to all of us. We had the most respect for him as any person in the world. If he had run for president, after he come back home, he would have been elected.
Yeah, I know. He impressed me watching him on TV. I don't think I've seen anybody explaining things quite like he did since then. And
He was a soldier general.
right, right. So when you come home, you're now a veteran,
Yes.
veteran of a foreign war. We hear stories about the Vietnam veterans, not
They
getting
got a raw deal.
getting the recognition, I guess you call. How did you feel accepted when you come home?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We went back and demobilized from Fort Eustis, Virginia, and they put us on buses to bring us back to Chrisfield. When we got to the Virginia line, the fire trucks, sirens, a parade from Virginia, all the way down to Chrisfield, and people lined up all.
Yeah, I
everywhere.
remember that. Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. A great feeling. So, anything about being there that you'd like to tell me that I haven't asked? I'm trying to.
Living conditions were miserable. The food was miserable. You might eat the same thing every day for 2 weeks in a row. And then if you complained to the higher ups, they would change it. You would get a different meal
For 2 weeks.
for 2 more weeks in a row.
Get 2 more weeks of the same
And
thing.
it was bad when the soldiers would rather have the sea rations than the food that they were feeding us.
Cooked.
We got one hot meal a day,
Yeah.
and a lot of them wouldn't even go after you eat the same thing 2 or 3 days in a row. Then the sea rations were a treat.
Yeah. What about the weather?
Hot,
Hot,
dry, sandy, dusty.
like being in a sandstorm all the time. When you say hot,
It was like 117 degrees.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drink a lot of water.
Yeah, had to drink
Hydrate all the
bottled
time.
water.
Yeah. Shortages of anything that keep you other than good food?
Other than good food.
Yeah.
No, it was, you had to put in for things, and it took time for it to go through all the channels to get what you requested. But when we left Fort Eustis, we had almost an unlimited budget on equipment. Everything was replaced. They took all of our vehicles to Fort Eustis and repainted everything to the desert color scheme, and fixed anything. If there was a light bulb out on one of them, everything was in A1 shape when we left here with it.
You get back home, you're everybody's happy to see you, and you're happy to be home.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of folks wanting to get out of the National Guard after that?
Some of them did, and some of them I've met some since then that stayed, and some that went regular Army,
Right.
wanted to go back in for the benefits and
Right.
the pay. And there was a few that said, I'm had it, I'm done.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the most part, they maintained.
Right. Well, it seems though in the past few years that we've had to rely a lot more on the National Guard and the reserves than they ever
Well,
did before.
the National Guards around the Salisbury area went several times.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I don't know if it was the particular MOS, the jobs, they wanted MPs, they wanted transportation. Transportation was the big deal for over there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really the infantry that they needed or desired. Of course, the Air Force was a big help.
Right.
They took care of pretty much all of that, things that the one-on-one soldier would have to do as far as the infantry.
When you were over there traveling in the trucks moving, did you have trucks ahead of you checking for landmines and things like that?
Yes, we had routes that were cleared with bulldozer that had armor plates on them, and you weren't to get off of those. There was no roads.
Right.
It was just tracks through the desert, but you didn't get off of those tracks. You didn't stop to go to the bathroom. You didn't walk off in the desert on each side of the roadway, and because they were landmines, carpet bombs, everything.
How about interaction with the Kuwaitis and the Saudis? Did you have much of that?
Not a lot. When we started hauling prisoners back by the tractor trailer loads. They would give you anything for a cigarette or a bottle of water, anything. They were scared,
Yeah.
and
They didn't want to be there anymore. You did.
they surrendered quicker. They wanted to get on our side.
How about that?
They didn't know that they were fighting the U.S. Army. They thought they were fighting Saudis.
Oh, is that right?
And when the U.S. Army come in, they surrendered,
That's
hands
right.
up,
How about that?
the whole 9 yards.
So the civilian population, I guess, in Iraq and Saudi, you didn't have a whole lot of.
Well,
you didn't get to go to town much, I guess. In other
There
words.
was no towns.
Yeah, yeah.
The Saudis actually migrated south with all their belongings and went south just as far as they could.
Is that right? How about
While
that?
we went north
Just
through Iraq.
left it all right there for. How about that? How about that? So. And then you come home and you got out of the Guard after 24 years, or
Yeah,
was it
24 years.
Yeah, 24 years, and met a lot of good people while you were there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thousands of people in the National Guard all over the state,
yeah,
different Army
Yeah.
bases that we
Yeah.
went to. Very fortunate in the military. We traveled a lot, been to a lot of different states, Canada twice, Luxembourg, Germany, Paris, and then Saudi, Iraq, and Kuwait. So it was a lifetime experience that I wouldn't trade for
Yeah.
anything.
yeah. Well, that's a good part about the military.
I would recommend the National Guard to any young male or female. There's a lot of benefits to it. There's college tuition, there's life insurances, there's a lot of benefits. Not that you have to stay 20 years as I chose to do, but I am so glad that I did for the 20 years. It's made a big impact on my retirement and my life, my health care, and I would recommend it to anybody.
And it instills a lot of discipline in young people.
lot
doesn't
of
it?
discipline.
Yeah, yeah. I've always.
You
I've
go
always
in
had-
as a young boy and
Yeah.
you come out as a young man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They put a few pounds on me while I was in there, so I was skinnier than a rail. Well, Bobby, thank you for your service to our country,
Thank
my
you.
friend. And,
Thank you for having me.
well, thank you for joining us today for this segment of Eastern Shore Veterans, their story, their honor. If you are a veteran or know a veteran that would like to join us, please give us a call. Thank you.